Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I am Matthew Zator, your host, and of course, joined in by my prospect experts here at the Hockey Writers, Peter Baracchini and Devin Little. Also joined in by former Hockey Writers contributor and current Dobber Prospects contributor is Hadi K. How you doing today, Hadi?
Doing very good. Excited to be here and talk about some prospects and get this started.
Yeah, so I mean, the draft's around the corner. We'll be talking about that, and you're a big guy for the Montreal Canadiens. So we're going to be doing a big deep dive on the Montreal Canadiens prospect pool, their plans for the draft and all that as well. So it's going to be a fun episode. We're talking a lot of Montreal Canadiens stuff and all that. So before we get going, I'm just going to make sure you know about our Hockey Writers Morning Skate newsletter. Make sure you're signed up for that. Delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday. It's jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. From the latest news, rumors, funnies, quizzes, all that stuff. Make sure you're signed up at morningskate.io. It's a great newsletter you can get right when you wake up in the morning with your coffee. So make sure you sign up for that. So this week, we'll be diving into the Montreal Canadiens prospect pool, and we'll start with the 2022 draft, which is in Montreal, and looking like that's where it's going to be, which is great because there was some things been up in the air that it may not be able to because of the COVID restrictions and all that. But as of right now, it looks like that's still on in July. So it's going to be great to actually have it in a place rather than having to just do it virtually on the computer, which has been a bit, I don't know. It's not been very good in the last couple drafts. So they'll be hopefully be able to just come up and bring pull on the jersey like normal and with their family and friends there too. So hopefully that goes. So let's talk about the 2022 draft. Before the trade deadline, which is in a week or so here, the Canadiens are in amongst the teams that could be trading guys to get first round picks. They have 12 right at this point. Hadi, we'll start with you. What type of player position do you think they'll be looking for in the first couple rounds? I mean, there is some conditional picks in there that they could actually have 2 first-round picks or maybe not. But what do you think on that?
Well, I think at the top of the draft, I think we'll go for a right-handed defenseman if they don't have the first overall pick. To me, Szymon Niemiec and David Jiricek would be the sort of the players that would fit the bill in that range. Right now on my personal ranking, I've got Niemiec second and Jiricek fourth. So I'm really high on those guys. I really like what they bring to the game. And later in the rounds, it really does depend on what's available. But I think they're going to try as much as possible to go with players that fit the new philosophy that they've brought in with Kent Hughes, with Jeff Gorton, and especially with Martin St. Louis. Players like, Pavel Mintyukov, Yuri Kulich, these players that are very creative, are very dynamic and are good at making reads on the fly. That's the sort of fit that I would see with the Habs. And as the rounds go on, I think we'll also go for players, that have more upside than players that are sure bets. I think the Habs are in a position right now where they need as many stars as possible. And I think swinging for the fences in those ranges would help them sort of get set in that sense. They've already got a couple of players that are probably going to be NHLers in their pool right now. It's just a matter of sort of raising the bar in terms of upside and what they've got in their pipeline right now.
Yeah. Peter, do you agree with that? What other stuff do you think they'd be looking in the first round? I mean, the top of the draft they're probably going to get a really good player, but what else would they be looking for?
Yeah, no, I agree with Hadi. I mean, let's face it, if you have an opportunity to get a Shane Wright or Logan Cooley, obviously that's your top priority. But if they do start to fall a little bit in the standings because they have gone on, winning streaks lately, then you want to try and address the best player available. And that could be a Simon Nemec or David Jiricek, fill out that right side. But I'm like Hadi said as well, they got that second pick from the Calgary Flames. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. He mentioned Mintyukov, Kulich. I was also even looking at two other right-handed defensemen should they miss out on Nemec and Juracek, and Tristan Luneau and Seamus Casey. Both, one is really dynamic in his two-way abilities. The other is very dynamic in his puck-moving abilities. So you still fill out that right-handed depth. You get a possible Drew Doughty-like player in Luneau. Slow start, dealt with injuries, but he's picked up with his, production, his consistency lately. And Casey's just been absolutely dynamite with the national development team. I'm absolutely amazed with his movements, his decision-making, and his smarts to jump into the rush and even just pinch up along the board. So yeah, I do agree that, high upside is going to be their main thing. Depending on where they are and who's available, maybe even take not necessarily address a position of need, but in the process, look for the best player available. And I think those two players could be within their wheelhouse as well.
Yeah, I think defense is definitely the thing that they have to be looking at moving forward, especially with Shea Weber. Probably not going to play in the NHL again, and they need someone to kind of take over for him. Devin, do you have anything to add to that, or are you just going to echo the same stuff here?
Yeah, not much to add. I just think that, excuse me, as long as Montreal doesn't, I guess, climb the standings too much, they're going to be in a situation where they're going to address the need, because, the top 10 specifically of this draft are filled with, really high-end prospects. And this is a team that doesn't have just one area of need in their prospect pool. So, no matter where they end up, if they end up with a top center, that's great. They could use that. If they end up with a top defenseman, that's great. They could use that too. So, it's just kind of a matter of finishing out the season and then seeing where the lottery balls fall.
So, the draft is the way Montreal, a lot of people didn't think they were going to be having to pick this high. Especially going to the Stanley Cup final, and it's really surprising how far they've dropped off. And they're going to get a ridiculously good player now in this draft, and it's going to be interesting to see. So on that note, let's talk about Peter's first mock that had them pick the top guy, Shane Wright. Do you agree with that pick, Hadi? You're our guest. We know what we think about it, but what do you think about that? Do you think the Montreal Canadiens, if they got that first overall pick and ended up the lottery balls fell where they were, do you think Shane Wright's the right pick, or would you go for a guy that's been, really good in the Olympics, Slavkovsky, or even like Logan Cooley? Who do you think is the best fit for the Canadiens if they did get that first pick?
I absolutely agree with Peter there. To me, Shane Wright, no one controls a game as efficiently as Wright does in this draft class. He's got the best brain in this class, and to me, teams really shouldn't even think twice about drafting him first overall. He's a good notch above the rest in terms of his play off the puck, his play on the puck, and especially he's got that pedigree of captaincy and leadership that teams look for as well. It's not just the skill on the ice; it's the intangibles. It's everything he does for his team. On the bench or off the ice, he's just a fantastic prospect, and to me, there's no doubt about it. He's a first overall pick.
Shane Wright's the way he's been turning around this. I don't know. I don't think he's been bad all season, but he was kind of maybe slow at the beginning, but the way he's turned it around this season now, he's just a great all around center. There's the other guys in the draft, they may be good too, but like Matthew Savoy, he's great offensively, but doesn't have that defensive side that Wright has. And he's got the leadership too. I don't know. I think it's pretty much a no brainer to go first. So, he goes first overall. So I do agree with that too. So let's go to the last bit of this. Other than the big guys, we know that the Montreal Canadiens will probably get a really good guy at the top, but they do have another first round pick, most likely. Hopefully they do have another first round pick from the Calgary Flames there, if they don't defer that to 2023. If I have the conditions right on that, I'm pretty sure. So Devin, we'll start with you on this. Who else do you think they should look at in the first round? You have a specific guy that, other than those big guys like Wright, Cooley, Slavkovsky, those guys at the top end, You have anyone else that you have an eye on for the Canadiens that would fit in their system? I think you mentioned a couple at the beginning there, but maybe go into depth a bit more.
Well, it obviously depends on, what happens with the Flames, in terms of how they finish this season. Because, if that pick ends up 32, it's going to be way different. You're going to be looking at a different batch of players than you do if you're picking 20. Now, that being said, kind of goes along with what I said in my first response, where they can kind of, they've got no one area of need, so they can, address a bunch of different ones. So I've got a player of pretty much every different position except for goaltender. I think Mattias could be a player that they take a look at. They could really use, another, especially with his skill set. They could use a player like that on the blue line that can really be a point producer for them and potentially be like a power play guy. I think they'd have a good spot in their lineup for him. Another guy, I think he fits into the mold, just kind of the type of player that they go for. And that's Liam Ogren. I like his work ethic a lot, and I think that the Canadiens get players like that a lot. I think of Brendan Gallagher, and I feel like Ogren is he's potential top 6 guy, works hard, and he's got some skill to go with it. He's not a center. Hopefully you can get like a Shane Wright, like we just said. And then if you can add a nice top 6 winger to your prospect pool as well. I think you're looking pretty good going into the future on top of the forwards that they already have in place.
The way the Montreal Canadiens, they're set up by, like I said, there's a few great defensemen in this draft that I think could really fit in the system right now. Hadi, do you have anyone that you are looking at in this first round that you really have an eye on for the Canadiens other than those big guys at the top?
Yeah, for me, I think the best fit for the Habs, if there's some way to trade up to get him, would be Frank Nazar. To me, this is a player that has a chance of being the highest producing player of the first round this year. The way he plays, the way he dominates the puck, the way that, the amount of times that I've watched him and he seemed in a corner, dispossessed from the puck, and I'd look down at my tracking notes to just jot him down for a turnover, and I'd look up and he still have the puck. To me, those are small elements of his game that I absolutely love. And if there's any way for the Habs to get him, I think he fits really well with the intuitive, high-tempo sort of hockey that the Habs are sort of trying to build right now with Martin St. Louis and Kent Hughes' philosophy. So that would be something that I'd look at. And I know that Jeff Thornton is really comfortable trading up to get the picks that he wants. So that would be an option there. In later rounds, I've really become a fan of Lane Hutson's game for the NTDP. He's a small guy, but having talked with his dad a bit on Twitter and generally just sort of looking into his profile, I think he's going to grow into his size and really sort of gain a physical element to his game that isn't as present right now. But I think he already defends taller than he is. And that would be an option there. But that's the thing. There's so many good defenders available in that range that maybe Hudson can slip into the late second or something like that. So there's also the European guys. There's players like Adam Sikora, like Yuri Kulich, like Philip Nassar. Those are guys that are already playing pro games, and I think they would sort of incorporate very well into the Habs system. But there's a long way to go and a bunch of games to watch yet. So I'm still looking into that and seeing who else could be available.
Well, I love Lane Hudson. He fits a lot of the things. I love those undersized defensemen that like Quinn Hughes in Vancouver here, and Hudson he's way smaller, but he's so dynamic, and I think you're going to get a steal wherever he goes. He may even enter that end first round, maybe. Peter, do you have anyone else that you want to kind of point out that the Canadiens could or should look at in the first round or second round here?
Yeah, I mean, I already gave my top 2 in Casey and Tristan Luneau for the first round, but I'm going to skip over to the second, and I'm looking at at the moment they had the 33rd overall pick for the second round, and again, subject to change based on standings and everything like that. But I'm really looking to see maybe if they'll try and expand their wing depth as well. If they choose to go, center with both picks or center D in the first round, and maybe look at Jimmy Snuggerud or Jaeger Furcus, both right wingers and very dynamic players. Like, they're absolute puck hounds. They want to battle. They want to get possession. fitting that style and philosophy that they have right now, and both possess a very lethal shot. You know, obviously they got a lot of depth on the wings right now, but you know what? You could fill that out. You can see them as the best players available in their eyes, and maybe move other assets to try and rebuild right now and get, you know, stationary pieces that could benefit the team. You know, should they decide in a year or two that they're in a situation to sell prospects, they had the chance to do it right now. And maybe they even move one of these two pieces. So it all depends on where they're going to go. But those are two names that I think really could fit their system going forward.
The draft is interesting because especially before the trade deadline of how many of these picks may move and even during the draft picks just keep, you know, flying around. It's going to be interesting to see how many they actually have at the end when the draft actually starts. So it's going to be interesting. The Canadiens, that's the draft. So, I mean, they're going to be adding a lot more prospects in this draft, but let's talk about the guys they have right now. I mean, they have quite a few interesting prospects, apart from now the graduated Cole Caufield, which is where we're going to start. Let's talk about the top prospect now. Now that Caufield is gone. I mean, he was their top prospect for a while here. Hadi, we'll start with you on this. Who do you think is their top prospect right now? They got a few guys that are kind of jostling for position, I think, at the top of that. Who do you name as their top prospect now that Caufield's gone?
I think with the progress he's shown this year, Caden Gouli's put himself just a notch above the rest. Before his trade to Edmonton, he was playing in Prince Albert, and he was already driving the bus there, really dominating defensively. And without him, Prince Albert's defensive numbers have pretty much collapsed. And now that he's on a more offensive team with more firepower in Edmonton, with a solid goalie in Sebastian Cossa behind him, he's doing a really good job with the Oil Kings. Especially, he's started activating offensively a lot more. He's not worried about leaving his teammates in trouble because his teammates are solid enough to back him up in his activations. And with each activation, he's learning to handle pressure and advance towards opponents and forecheckers rather than sort of escape their pressure. That was one thing that I wanted to see in Gouli's game improve, and it has. So that's really promising on this side. I used to have doubts about his decision-making under pressure. He used to sort of throw pucks up the boards and not think too much about it, but I see him a lot more taking his time, absorbing waves of pressure, escaping them, rolling off checks, and just generally doing a good job of moving the puck. So I think his game has progressed a lot, and Edmonton is the best place for him to finish the season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's in Montreal next year. Yeah,
Gouli's great, and he's on a pretty good team in the Oil Kings, I think.
100%.
They're pretty good. They're a pretty good team. Yeah. So, Peter, do you agree with that? Is Gouli the top prospect, or you have someone else in mind?
It would be foolish not to have Gouli as the top prospect. And as Hadi mentioned, the development in his game, especially with his decision-making, even last year with Team Canada, you saw the pinches and the decision-making, you know, taking the hit instead of playing the puck at times. You notice that issue. But this year with Team Canada and even the progression with Prince Albert and with Edmonton Oil Kings right now, you're seeing that confidence. You're seeing that ability to adapt in whatever situation that unfolds. So yeah, I do think Caden Gouli is a top prospect in that regard, but I wouldn't count out Joshua Roy just yet. You know, this was a prospect that was supposed to be a second rounder, kind of dipped for me last year because of the inconsistencies. Although as soon as he got traded to Sherbrooke, you know, the goal scoring and the consistency started to pick up. But this is, again, kind of like a gem for the Montreal Canadiens, where he has that scoring ability. He has the size. He has the potential to be an impactful goal scorer, power forward type of player, and he can play both center and wing. So that's a really great beneficiary to the Canadiens, because they could see where he's best suited in the future. And you know what, 82 points in 42 games, teams may have really dropped the ball on that one, because yeah, you may have seen some of those issues in his game, but then as soon as he got traded, you started to see the confidence build up. And to me, he should have at least been a third round pick. And the fact that the Montreal Canadiens got him in the 5th round says a lot. And that's a really great pickup. So watch out for him, because he's going to be generating some noise.
Yeah.
Joshua Roy is you've had him as your prospect of the week, I think, a couple times.
Yeah.
So you can tell how much Peter likes that guy.
Oh yeah.
Devin, you have someone else that you have in mind? And I mean, Gooley and Roy are really good. You have anyone else that you kind of want to throw into that mix?
Yeah, I think you raised a good point at the top of this topic where you said that, there are some other players in the mix, and maybe not. I think Gooley is the best just in terms of I guess not even just his upside, but like I feel the most confident about him, being what we kind of think he's going to be. But, and we're going to talk about him shortly here, I do think that Mattias Norlinder is somebody to keep an eye on. I do like his package, and I do think that he's definitely going to be an NHL player sooner rather than later. Again, I like Gooley's upside a bit more than his, but he's someone that you should be excited about if you're a Canadiens fan. And even if you're not a Canadiens fan, you should have your eye on this guy because he's got some silky smooth skills, and I believe in his ability to push himself to the next level. So I'll definitely be keeping my eye on him going forward.
Well, it's a great segue, Devin, to our next topic is the Swedish defenseman Mattias Norlinder, who impressed at training camp this past September when he was one of the final cuts, and which, I mean, he could have made the team. There was a talk about it. Peter, let's start with you on this. What do you like about his game, and how far do you think he's going to be from the NHL to being a full-time defenseman? What do you think?
Well, his skating jumps out right away. I mean, he's very smooth, very confident and poised with the puck, especially when he's in transition. He's that prototypical puck moving defenseman that any team wants. This year, yeah, he looked great, but there was, again, kind of like Caden Gooley decision making, maybe just trying to get more acclimated with the style and pace of play. Maybe it got to him a bit. The consistency wasn't there, and he was sent back on loan to Frölunda. So I think maybe that time over in the SHL will help him. But he does have the upside. I mean, it's just a matter of it all coming together. I think maybe in a year or two he could probably push for a roster spot. I think maybe this year they just wanted to see him progress a little bit more, considering maybe that expectations for major competition wasn't going to be that high. So maybe they saw enough of him and be like, okay, we liked what we saw, but you know what, continue to progress a little bit better. That's where I stand with Norlinder. Obviously, again, very fantastic puck mover, great speed and agility. Once he's able to find that offensive consistency and, being at that pace of play, I think he's going to be a very outstanding defensive prospect, or not even prospect, player for them in the future.
Over to you, Devin. Anything to add to that, or did Peter just kind of say everything?
Well, a couple things here. One, I think that he showed some pretty good confidence for being a kid, especially, the period of time he was with the Canadiens. The Canadiens, started off not real good. And to his credit, I think he showed some good spunk. I read an article, and long story short, he said that I'm going to be back. He's very confident that he's going to be back in Montreal. And sometimes people are weary of kids who talk like that because they might seem a little bit full of themselves. I like confidence. I like kids who believe in themselves. And I think that's something that you can't teach either. So for him to have that, I think that's great. And then the other thing. He's playing in the SHL this season, right? And that's a men's league. That's a professional men's league. Me being a Red Wings guy, that's where Moritz Seider played last year. And I think that was huge for his development, playing against guys that could play in the NHL, maybe not super high in the lineup, but he's playing against some legitimate players over there. And I think that it was wise for him to go back over there this year. I think it was probably the best step in his development, but he's playing against good players. And I think that the lessons he's learning right now will carry over to next season. And I expect him to push pretty hard for a roster spot. I don't know if he's going to get one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the last cuts again next season.
Hadi, you finish this thought off. What do you think about Norlinder's game, and how far do you think he's from the NHL?
I think he's a fantastic offensive mind. His vision is IQ. The way that he manages offensive timing, offensive processing. One thing that I really, really like about his game is how he constantly manages to catch pucks and pivot and without slowing down at all. That's something that when the rest of his game, if the rest of his game falls into place, that's a small detail that makes a difference between the great and the excellent. So there's a lot to work on in terms of his defensive timing, his box outs, the way that he defends the rush. He can be a bit slow to react in some areas, but at the end of the day, with what I've seen of him at the NHL level, I'm confident that he'll make it at that level. It's just a matter of how high he gets. I think for offensive defensemen, there's a scale from Eric Gustafsson to Cale Makar, and I think he's closer to Gustafsson. But at the end of the day, he's still going to be a great offensive player and the type of guy that can man a power play really efficiently. The only thing is, under Dom Ducharme, who, by the way, should be fired again. That was great. Yeah, under Ducharme, the thing is, he was really sort of manning the power play very little. And when he was out there, he was playing maybe 7 or 8 minutes a night. And there were moments where Ben Sherratt was out there on top of him. And Ben Sherratt has 2 power play points in his entire career. So I don't know in which universe that makes sense. But at the end of the day, I think under Martin St. Louis, he's going to have a better chance of being a full-time NHL because his assets are more valued. The things that he does fit well with the system. It's less about structure and a lot more about reads and intuitive hockey. So I think that's where Norlinder's headed.
Yeah, I love Swedish defensemen in general because they all seem to be pretty good. So yeah, we've talked about a couple of great defensemen in the system prospects wise, but let's talk about a guy that's, again, seems to be another steal that's just seems to be keep rising on the ranks and his numbers and wherever he's going is, of course, Sean Farrell. He was named to the Olympic team, had a really great tournament over there. He's in the NCAA, drafted all the way down at 124th overall. I mean, it's 19 points in 18 games. It's Harvard. Hadi, we'll start with you. What is this guy's ceiling? I mean, the way he's been keep progressing up the ranks here. He just seems to perform everywhere he goes, from Chicago now to Harvard, Olympics. I mean, What do you think he can be in the NHL when he actually gets here?
I think he could make a good top 6 option. The thing with Farrell is, one thing I've noticed is he does very well against lower tier teams. So right now he's playing in the ECAC division, which is the Ivy League division. There's games where he's playing against Cornell, against Dartmouth, against these college programs that don't necessarily have many drafted prospects or many high-end prospects in the ranks. And against those teams, he's burning them. He's doing much better than them. But the games I've seen him play against BU, against Northeastern, against those higher end teams that are really sort of solid in terms of their structure, he does tend to sort of fall off the scoring sheet a bit. And that's a bit of the same thing we saw in the Olympics, where he started off great against China with a 6-point game or a 5-point game. And then after that, it sort of tempered off slightly. And especially against teams like Sweden, like those other sort of main Olympics teams, we saw him a bit falter. But honestly, in terms of his profile, he's one of the best playmakers right now in any system. The way he passes through sticks like they don't exist, to me, it's something that really can be honed into and developed into something even better. He's improved his shot a lot. That's something that I've noticed a lot. And the main thing is he's a very sneaky, good defensive player. He'll get involved in his own zone, find ways to lift sticks, get the puck, especially along the boards. I think his only issue right now is gaining weight, maybe improving his skating slightly. He's fast, but he's not as dynamic as I wish he would be at his size. So those are the 2 elements I want to see improve in his game before I'm confident sort of putting him as a top-line ceiling player. But for the moment, I think a top 6 would be something realistic.
Peter, I know you love Sean Farrell. What do you think his ceiling is in the NHL when he gets here? Because I think he does. He does make it to the NHL, but where do you think he will fall?
Yeah. Before I get into that, shout out to the people that questioned me having Sean Farrell as a top 5 prospect for the Hockey Writers, farm system rankings, because my gut feeling's looking pretty good right now. But I mean, basically what Hadi said about his game is just absolutely stands out, especially the dynamic ability to find those seams, the passes, the ability to shield the puck very well for his size. It stands out very well, and it reminds me of the playmaking abilities that you see in a Mitch Marner, in a Johnny Gaudreau type of fashion, where smaller players, but they have the smarts and the skill and the hands to outplay their competition. And yeah, to me, a second line winger is definitely not out of the question. I probably would utilize him more as a wing than a center. But hey, again, it all depends on what Montreal sees fit. But the fact that you could utilize him on the wing, you could probably insert him, on a top power play unit, feed those passes to, a certain guy who likes to score goals, and Cole Caufield. So you have that other option along with Nick Suzuki on that top unit. So you have the makings of players right there that, have the chemistry, have the ability to take advantage of their opportunities. And, there are obviously other players in the Montreal system that, stand out, but I really think Sean Farrell is, raising his stock as a potential piece for the Montreal Canadiens at this point.
Devin, bring us home on this one. What do you think about Sean Farrell? Is he a top 6 guy or something more of a bottom guy?
Well, real quick, I just want to say, Peter, that the only thing missing from your opening thing there was an actual mic drop. So,
I pick up the mic and just drop it on the table.
I think both you guys covered it pretty good. I've got him as a middle 6 guy, leaning more towards second line winger. I think he could end up being a first line guy as long as the other 2 guys on that line are clearly play driving, great players. I think he could be a complimentary guy on that line. But he could also be a third line guy that carries that line. I think that he has the ability to just basically move up and down the top 9 depending on how the rest of the lineup shakes up. And he does have the ability to make some plays. And like Peter, I think he fits more as a winger, and that might end up affecting what he is or what he isn't at the NHL level. But like I said, I think that he could very much be a player that just kind of floats around the top 9 and plays with who fits best, plays on the power play, and just racks up points. He's got a good future ahead of him. I like his vision on the ice.
Well, I mean, the NHL, they need play. I think playmaking wingers are something that some centermen need. There's a lot of centermen that
For sure
can't pass the puck. I mean, it's just, to be a top guy, I mean, you do have to have that dimension, but there are some guys just coming to my mind, guys like Ryan Kessler, Bo Horvat's not the best. Of course I'm pointing out Canucks because that's my specialty, but Kessler was one of those guys who just couldn't pass. I mean, but if he had a playmaking winger on his line, he would be able to score. So it's underrated to have a guy like that on a line. And Mitch Marner comes to mind as being that type of guy, playing on Austin Matthews' line. I mean, his playmaking comes through a lot. A lot of fans want him to shoot more, but it's just, he's just the best I'd say probably one of the best playmaking wingers in the NHL. So I can't discount that. Let's move on to some goaltending talk here a little bit. Carey Price is, we don't know what's going to happen with him. What other goaltending prospects do the Canadiens have any? I mean, do they have anyone that you're looking at? Peter, we'll start with you. Any goaltending prospects that you think could be NHL starters, or is that something they need to address because Price may not be here very much longer?
Yeah. Obviously, Price's status is still much in doubt. I know he started skating and practicing, but obviously no timeline for Carey Price's return. They did draft Joe Verbetic in the 7th round in 2021, and he's looking pretty good. 23, 9, and 6, but 900 save percentage, 3 goals against. Average numbers, to say the least, especially for the OHL, where you have a lot of competition. but he's basically their best goaltending prospect that they have. Looking at Caden Primo, his time is coming up. Is now is the time. Obviously, he's 22, but there's still a little bit of hope with him. So aside from those two, their goaltending pool is very, very bare. And I know we talked about the NHL draft before, what the Canadiens should do if, in fact, in the third round, they get a chance at a, Tyler Brennan to try and draft him and improve their, goaltending depth. I think that's something to look forward to, considering the fact that they don't have many options at this point. Again, anything could change, and it's all based on, how they develop and how they improve from here on out. But it's looking pretty dicey for the Canadiens, and especially at that position.
Goaltending is something they need to look at for sure. Hadi, you have anyone in mind that they could potentially come out of nowhere and become a top goaltending prospect? Or this something they really need to look at?
Yeah, let me introduce you to Frederick Vico. To me, this guy is one of the top goaltenders in any pool, really. I really like his game. He's one of the biggest guys in the Habs system. Not only that, but he's one of the most athletic. He's probably the most athletic goaltender in the Habs system as well. And honestly, when I watched his games for Kristianstad in the Allsvenskan in the second Swedish division, I really felt like this was a guy who could regularly stop pucks at an NHL level. Now, there's a lot to see in his game. He's probably going to have to sign in the AHL and work his way up, but I'm really hopeful about his game. And talking with my colleague Patrick Vexel at Habs Eyes on the Prize, who follows Swedish prospects and European prospects for the Habs in general, he has a lot of good things to say about Vico. To me, I think he's most likely a top 5 or top 6 prospect in the Habs pool. I'm really high on this game, and I'm excited to see what he gives once he signs in the NHL, once he signs it in North America, I should say, because that's when you'll see sort of how he plays on smaller ice, how he manages the more high tempo, multi-balance game that you see in North America on smaller ice.
Yeah, that's a great guy to look, keep an eye on for sure. Devin, let's finish with you. Who do you have as a goaltending prospect that you're looking at? Has he been mentioned, or you have someone else that you're looking?
I think the overall consensus on this topic is that the Habs may want to look into adding a goalie in this draft and moving forward, because even if they have the guy or they don't have the guy, you don't know, and they definitely could use another prospect or two in that position. And honestly, just depending on how long they take, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and pick up another team's young goalie that maybe needs a shot. But that's neither here nor there right now. I've been watching Caden Primo pretty much since he burst onto the scene. I really, really thought he was going to be something special. And I don't think the jury's out on him quite yet, but I also think that, kind of like Peter said, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I still think he has the goods to be an NHL goaltender. Maybe it might end up being more as a backup, but he's somebody that I'd like to see get an extended look in the NHL, just so we can kind of start to really figure out what he is, because at one point in time he was looking like almost an untouchable for the Canadiens, and now we're here. And part of the reason why I say they should probably invest in drafting a goalie is because he hasn't quite panned out into what we thought he was going to at this point.
Yeah, well, thing is, I've said this before, is goaltending is an interesting position. It's sometimes guys come out and they come really quick, and other times they take forever to develop, and all of a sudden you're like, where did this guy come from? Or they struggle. Like Devin Dubnyk is a huge example of this. He struggles and struggles, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, where did he come from? And he becomes a really good goalie for a few seasons. So, I mean, goalies are just so hard to project. I mean, you can draft them in the 6th round and they become an elite starter. So it's going to be interesting to see where that all pans out. Let's move on to talking about some prospects you're excited about coming up to the Canadiens. I mean, we've talked about a few of them, but other than those guys, there's quite a few other prospects in this system that are exciting. Peter, you have anyone that you want to kind of point out that's you're excited to see in the NHL one day?
Yeah. I'm going to go to their 2020 second rounder, Jan Mysak. Just absolutely dynamite at how he's able to progress since coming over to North America. He was playing in the senior league. Then he comes over to the OHL, 25 points in 22 games. Obviously, last season was a real struggle because, OHL, no hockey. Did manage to score 2 goals in the AHL, but going back to the juniors, he's just been lights out good. And he's got, and again, we talked about this many times before. He's got that competitive edge. He's got the size. He's got the physicality to be a puck possession type of player, someone that could really thrive in Martin St. Louis system and the philosophy of, letting the players do their job, but also, playing to their strengths. Mysak can do that. He is very, very aggressive. He's tenacious. He likes to get on the forecheck. He likes to dig for those loose pucks and gain possession and just bully his way to the front of the net. I really like him. I really think that, maybe he could have been a first rounder, but then again, kind of another steal for the Montreal Canadiens in 2020 in the second round there. But he's someone that I've really caught my eye, 2 years ago, and he's still catching my eye right now.
Yeah, Mysak is, I liked him in that draft, throughout the coverage. So he's gonna be exciting to come up for sure. Hadi, let's go to you next on this. Anyone that you're excited to see in the NHL one day that's in the system right now?
In terms of a player I'm most excited about, it's really got to be Farrell. I'm really excited of seeing where he goes with his career. But among the players we haven't mentioned, I think Jaden Struble is a sneaky good pick for the Habs. The type of player that is still very raw and still got some things to learn, especially in terms of simplifying his game. But he's so good at drawing in pressure, at finding secondary passing lanes. He's physical. He's a great skater. I think with enough time and with enough dedication to his case in terms of development on the Habs side, I think he could top out as a number 2, number 3 defenseman. I really, really like his game, and I think he'll bring it to a level that that goes beyond the flash, because he's able to take the puck and go end to end. But I want to see him make small slip passes, evade pressure in less conventional ways than just, a forehand, backhand deep or that kind of thing. There's still small elements he needs to build, but in general, I really like this game.
Yeah, that's another great name. Devin, finish us off. Who do you have your eye on that's an exciting guy that's coming up?
Well, Mysak was my guy, and then somebody took him. So, I'm gonna highlight a prospect they just recently added in that Toffoli trade, and that is Emil Heineman. Now, mind you, this is a guy who's already, before he's even touched NHL an NHL ice surface, it's already been traded twice. He was drafted by the Panthers, then he was traded to Calgary in the Sam Bennett trade, and now he is a Montreal Canadiens prospect. And I think that typically when that sort of thing happens, you almost start to go, ooh, what's going on here? Why is this dude, why are teams so keen on getting rid of him? And I think that, maybe there is some cause for concern there, but as for me, I still like him a lot as a potential almost Swiss Army knife type of player. I think that he can kind of fill a multitude of roles depending on where he's at in the lineup. I don't think he's going to be a big time scorer at the NHL level, but I do think he could be a nice source of depth scoring, especially if he's playing with the right guys. I think that he could develop into a guy that you could trust in defensive situations. And he was drafted 43rd overall. That's a second round pick. He's and that's right around where I had him too, in terms of where I thought he was. I think he's got a toolkit that still needs some time to develop and kind of refine, maybe find his niche a little bit. But beyond that, I think he's got a good foundation to build on. And I'd like to see him cross the pond, maybe next season or the year after that, and start to see what his game looks like in North America.
Well, if the Canadiens can get something, apart from that first round pick, and that even like Heineman becomes even just an NHLer. I mean, that's an even better trade for them, in that Toffoli trade. So, and he seemed like a kind of a throw-in to me. That first round pick, I think, was the biggest deal in that. But if he becomes even just a guy that can contribute, that's great for them. Who haven't I have? Devin, it was the last one, so I've got to everyone. Let's finish this off with some underrated guys. I mean, we know all the flashy guys and all that stuff, but there's some guys that are kind of maybe flying under the radar. Is there anyone that you have, Peter? We'll start with you. Do you have anyone that you're looking at that's been kind of underrated in the system, that's not got all the headlines around, or we haven't mentioned or anything like that?
Yeah. And again, I keep on saying this, but I'm really happy that the Habs took him at the end of 2021 and Oliver Kapanen. I think he's a name that really hasn't generated a lot of, attention, mainly because the production isn't there like it was during his draft year, where he had the 41 points in 37 games with Kalpa at the U20 league in Finland. But it's more his awareness and his IQ away from the puck and defensively. He's very, very smart in that regards. He's great positionally. He knows how to attack and pick his spots, knows how to keep players at the outside. He's very smart defensively, but in the event that the offense does come, look out, because obviously right now you're looking at him at maybe as, a third line energy kind of player, but he's going to be someone that could probably put up the points and be a very critical factor in the team's bottom six. And the Montreal Canadiens have someone that when he does produce, he's going to be on top of his game, and he's going to be that more of a lethal dual threat.
Kapanen was a guy that I really liked in that draft as well. And a heck of a pick for the Canadiens. I think apart from the first round, which we won't mention his name right now, they did a really good job in that 2022 draft. Devin, let's go to you. Underrated. Who do you have in the system that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think this player maybe hasn't had the season that he was hoping to have, but I still have a lot of time from it. I think that he could still develop into something, and that's Luke Tuck. I big fan of his brother, and while I don't think that he's going to be just like Alex, I do think that he has the ability to be a nice bottom six power forward going into the future. Offense probably isn't going to be, a key thing with his game, but I do think he has the ability to be kind of an imposing forward out there, gets into the greasy areas, ties people up on the boards. And then, if he's got some skill guys alongside him, he can create space for them to do their thing. Excuse me. Still think he's a couple years out. But again, he still has that toolkit that I thought that I know I was enticed by, and I was excited to see them take him when they took him in the 2020 draft.
Hadi, let's finish this topic off. Underrated guys, who do you have?
It's hard to pick one, so I'll just mention a couple sort of glancingly. Xavier Simoneau is one that I don't see anyone talking about, and I've been hammering this nail since 2019. This kid is going to be something special. He might not be the top six forward that we saw, for example, in Brendan Gallagher, but he's got that sort of play style where he's so good with the puck, he's so good without it. He's one of the most feisty guys that you'll find outside of the NHL. Another one's Riley Kidney. I really like his game. I think his stick handling needs a bit of work. He still has his top hand locked in his side rather than sort of free and able to sort of stick handle around. But in general, his playmaking is good. He's got a good scoring touch. So he's good as well. And the last one I'll mention is Jesse Ylönen from the Laval Rocket. He's pretty much he's a best skater in the Habs system right now. I don't think there's a doubt about that. He's one of the most dynamic skaters, and he's got a good playmaking and scoring element that I think even next year he should have a bottom six spot on the Habs. So he'd be a good rookie to look at.
Lots of great names there. Riley Kidney's one of my guys that I would have pointed out as well. I mean, he's got a lot of upside in the NHL, I think. Not all these guys are going to hit, obviously. Prospects are prospects, and unfortunately not all of them become NHLers, but there's some great skill sets that are in this system. So great names, great perspective on all that. So before we get into our prospects of the week, we're running a bit long on time, but let's just do a couple quick fire questions centered around a guy that's we thought was going to be the Calder Trophy winner. He used to be a prospect. He's no longer, as of course, Cole Caufield. Let's start with this question, which is just a fun question. will he? I mean, the way he's been kind of moving on Martin St. Louis being coach here, and he's kind of turned around his game. Hadi, we'll start with you. Do you think he'll score 50 goals under Martin St. Louis' coaching if he becomes a full-time job? Because he hasn't. He's still an interim coach. But what do you think?
I think Caufield will crack 40 multiple times. I'm not sure he cracks 50 just yet. He needs to get comfortable shooting low on top of sort of picking corners like he already does. I don't see him sort of shoot under the blocker often, that kind of thing. So I want to see that from him before I project him as a 50 goal scorer.
Yeah. Peter, I agree, or do you think he'll hit 50?
At some point, yes. In the next 2-3 years, maybe not. But again, as soon as his confidence builds, he will get to that point.
Devin, 50 goals, Cole Caufield, what do you think?
I'm with Hadi. I think that he could sniff it, but I think he's going to be more of a he's going to stay comfortable in the 40 goal territory.
Yeah, I will go with that too. I think 40 goals he'll probably hit a few times. He's so good. I mean, I think that was just a blip at the beginning of the season. But
so the blip is Ducharme.
Well, let's talk about a guy that could become his line mate, maybe, and Sean Farrell. Do you think he's going to be the guy to set him up for those 50 goals, Peter?
Yeah, and this is where the fact that you got a really strong two-way playmaking center, Nick Suzuki and Sean Farrell, you got two potential guys that could feed him the puck constantly, and this is just going to make the Montreal Canadiens that more dangerous, given the fact that they know, similar to the Maple Leafs, who they want to pass the puck to in Austin Matthews. The Montreal Canadiens are going to do the exact same thing with Cole Caufield. So having two really strong playmaking players, it's definitely a really good sign to have.
Devin, agree, or you think he's on another line?
Yeah, I think he'll at least get the look. I don't know if that's long term where he stays, but I think there's definitely a high possibility that it at least happens.
How do you agree? What do you think?
I'm with Devin here. I think that there's still some progress needed in Farrell's game for him to sort of be a mainstay on the top line, but I think he'll get a look, and most likely he'll be paired to him on the power play on each flank or something like that.
All right, let's finish this off with, I agree too. I mean, I love Sean Farrell. I think that's why I put this question in here. I think he's going to be his line mate and setting him up for a lot of goals. So let's finish this off with why. I mean, why do you think Cole Caufield has turned his game so much around under Martin St. Louis? Devin, we'll start with you. What have you seen of what you've seen in Cole Caufield different from the beginning of the season to now when St. Louis is now the coach? I mean, we can see the obvious things. I mean, they're both undersized players, so they kind of have that connection. But why has he changed so much under St. Louis?
Well, this is where I'm going to echo what Hadi said, and Ducharme should be fired twice. Because four out of his last 5 games, Caufield has played 20 minutes or more. That had not happened at all prior to those 4 games. So St. Louis is actually playing the kid, and he's showing that he's got confidence in his ability to produce. I think when you're a young kid and you've got a coach that's showing that they trust you and they have confidence in your ability to produce, it's hard not to feel that, and it's hard not to feel good about it. And that's why I think you're seeing Caufield start to look more like himself. When his coach didn't trust him, he probably didn't trust himself, but now he's got a coach that trusts him. So what do you think he does?
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. Hadi, anything to add to that? What have you seen different in Caufield's game from the beginning of the season when he was sent down to the AHL and getting 1 assist and whatever? I mean, and kind of blowing our Calder Trophy hopes out of the water. What do you think has changed?
Yeah, obviously there's the Ducharme element. I mean, literally he was sometimes playing under 10 minutes a game. But it's not only that, but it's the time between his shifts. Every time he made a mistake, he'd sit on the bench for 3 or 4 minutes. He'd get, the lines would get switched up, and he'd go from playing with Suzuki and Anderson or Toffoli to playing with Michael Pizzetta and Laurent Dauphin. And I like those guys in their role, but they're not the guys to put Caufield with in order to see him produce. And just, knowing that he can make a mistake, just hop right back out there, it's made him make less mistakes because he's not worrying as much. And a lot of players have echoed this throughout the Habs. Ducharme's system was like a checklist that they needed to sort of check off every time they were on the ice. It was very structured, when St. Louis just letting them go out there and have fun. And that's the that's the structure in which Caufield succeeds. So just a change of philosophy and the confidence that St. Louis has shown in him has really helped him a lot in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think St. Louis has changed a lot in a lot of players' games. I mean, just watching from how they were at the beginning to now, it's like night and day. I mean, to how they've played. And so, yeah, Peter, what do you think? Anything to add to that of what you've seen different in Caufield's game since the beginning of the season?
I'll say this: fired the charm 3 times. Just to keep the momentum going. Yeah, and then, I mean, both Devin and Hadi nailed it on the head. Mix of like, the ice time, making the game fun for him. And yeah, the game is all X's and O's, but when you have a player like Caufield, yeah, you got to have the system in place, but you got to make it fun. And if you focus too much on the system, the player's going to struggle. And we saw that consistently game in, game out. Whenever Caufield was playing, gets sent down. He looked impressive in the AHL, gets called back up, and the same thing is still happening. So who's at fault for that? Obviously, it's the head coach. You change the coach, you get in someone that, relates to him, that wants him to play to his strengths. And now you're seeing the results of what we saw towards the tail end of last year with his stint, what we saw in the playoffs against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We saw that dynamic player. So, it's just a matter of him having fun with the game right now, but still playing to the strategy and the game plan that St. Louis wants to execute.
Confidence is a big thing. I mean, especially for young players, their confidence has to be, and not just young players. I mean, everyone. When your confidence is high, it's such a difference in your game. And if your coach trusts you to go out there and play, and you're not benched every time you make a mistake, it's a huge, huge difference when you're developing. So I'm glad that Caufield's turned around, because he's an exciting player. The NHL needs these guys. So it's great that he's back. So yeah, that's a quick fire round. Let's to the end of the show with what we usually do on this show is the Prospects of the Week segment. Start with you, Peter. Who are you pointing out as your Prospect of the Week this week?
Yeah. Again, going back to the 2021 draft, that was a very big, I'm going to say stand account of this player in Olen Zellweger. Just absolutely phenomenal. Smaller player, but he's just absolutely dynamic with his skating, his speed, his mobility, his decision-making. Has 58 points in 43 games with Everett Silvertips this season, and he just continues to be that offensive dynamo, sort of in the mold of, a Samuel Girard, but a little bit more tempo and pace to his game. He's tied for first overall in points in the WHL, and the fact that they develop quite a few solid puck moving two-way defenders. Zellweger is one of those guys that has really stood out, last season in the WHL with Team Canada, and he's standing out again this season, taking another step forward. So he's my prospect of the week.
I love Zellweger. The way in the under 18s, he was dynamite. So great choice on the Prospects of the Week there. Devin, Prospect of the Week, who you have?
Yeah, my Prospect of the Week is a Minnesota Wild prospect, and this is a prospect that they got in the 5th round of the 2020 draft. And I remember, at least for my part, I had him more as like a 3rd round guy, so I thought they got kind of a steal with this kid. He's a little undersized, so that might have been, what did it, but it's Pavel Novak. And he's a guy that I think, to some extent, he reminds you of Alex DeBrincat, but obviously DeBrincat's way more explosive than he is, but there's a lot of similarities just in how they play. He's got 57 points in 47 games in the WHL this season, and that's after in the 2019-20 season, which was ultimately cut short. He had 58 points in 55 games, and that was his draft season. He's a player that, like I said, I had him ranked a bit higher than where he went. I think he has a potential to, really become a top 9 player for the Wild. He's got to play with guys that can get him the puck and guys that can, create space for him, being a smaller guy. But he's got potential to be a real offensive piece for them going forward. And I've liked what I've seen from him this season, and that includes his 2 games in the World Juniors where he had 2 points. So he's looked pretty good this year. Well,
I like him. Small guy, dynamic. it's my type of player. Hadi, who do you have as a prospect of the week you want to highlight here?
Might be biased here, but I'll go with Joshua Roy. To me, this kid, he's just so good. And watching him this year, you realize that skating isn't everything. His skating is still poor. I'm not going to deny that. He's got a lot to work in terms of explosivity, in terms of speed, and endurance in general to get to at least an NHL average level. But he's so smart. He's got a great shot. Anything he does on the forehand, he can do on the backhand. His one-touch play is good, and also he can hold up play to open up lanes very well. It's for a reason that he's top in the queue right now on par with players in their draft plus 1 year, like Anthony Mantha and Jonathan Drouin and other players of that range in terms of point per game rate the year after being drafted. He's a really good prospect, and especially since the Habs added Adam Nicholas to their development team, which he's basically a skating whiz. He's really good at developing that. I think Joshua Roy has a great chance of being a top 6 player with the Habs.
I love Joshua as well. I mean, we've talked about him on the show before and on this show. So my prospect of the week is a guy the Canucks just signed out of the WHL and the Red Deer Rebels is Arshdeep Bains. What can you say about this kid? I mean, he's moved from being a walk-on, undrafted in the Bantam draft, undrafted in the NHL, and now signed by the Vancouver Canucks. So he's had a ridiculously good season. He's got 30 goals, 82 points, unless he added something since I looked at his stats. He was leading the WHL at one point. I believe he's tied for the lead. I mean, he's been just racking up the points with Ben King, who's another undrafted guy on his line that has, I believe, 43 goals. These guys have both jumped out and become top end guys in the dub. I mean, we don't know what they're going to do in the NHL, what he's going to do in the NHL, but what he's done in this past season he's got size, he's got pretty good skating, creativity. There's a few plays that, kind of jaw-dropping plays this season that he's done. So Arshdeep Bains, he's going to be an exciting guy to watch in the Canucks system, probably in Abbotsford next season. But I mean, he's been an exciting player, and I'm glad that the Canucks were able to sign him. And he's just from Surrey, which is my backyard here. So great to see a hometown guy, which the Canucks don't seem to focus on a lot in that when they have all these guys just around them. But Arshdeep Bains is my prospect of the week this week. So yeah, that's the end of the show. That's another episode of Prospect Corner. Thanks, Hadi, for joining us today to talk about Montreal Canadiens, the draft and stuff. So we're gonna have to get you on again for sure, because that was a great talk about prospects. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it'd be great to be back. And I had a lot of fun talking with you guys. So definitely interested in that.
So, I mean, that's another show. I mean, 2022 draft is it's coming. I mean, July 7th, and it's prospect profiles are already flying out of the Hockey Writers. We got what Peter? We got like 12, 15 already or something.
I'd say we're in the double digits at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's quite a few that have come out already. The draft guide is live at the Hockey Writers, so definitely check that out. Peter just dropped his latest rankings like an hour before we recorded this show, so definitely check those out as well. We'll be having another show on that. We're having another show on that for sure coming up, debating his changes and talking like that. So, and look for a short video on his top 10 in the next few days as well. So on the YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us for another Hockey Writers Prospect Corner. Definitely check out the Morning Skate newsletter at morningskate.io. Lots of great content there. And it's great. There's nothing on the website. I like it. So you have to get it in your inbox every morning. So definitely check that out. For Peter, Devin, Hadi, this is Matthew, and we'll see you next time on the Prospect Corner.